Hi tech lovers and welcome to the Tech Hub. This episode is an Apple budget buy series where I reviewed old Apple tech to see if it still functions and find any uses today. This episode looks at the iPad Air first generation, which was released in 2013. Is this still usable in 2025? Let's find out. Let's start the episode. Okay, so my history with the iPad Air, I had the 5th generation, which of course had the M1 chip, one of my favorite all-time iPads, and it's probably one of my highest recommendations today. I think that was my first iPad Air. I think I had previous ones. I really can't remember. I certainly didn't stay in the normal base model iPads for long, so it was a mix of Airs and Pros throughout my history of iPads. Anyway, it's still a great design. I think the design holds up in today's age, and yeah, it's history making iPad, and we certainly wouldn't be as thin or where we would be today without this one. So let's look into the history of this device. Okay, so today we are diving into the history of the first ever iPad Air, a device that marked a major shift in Apple's tablet lineup. The iPad Air wasn't just another iPad, it redefined what Apple's tablets could be: lighter, faster, and with a fresh new design. So, how did it all start out? Let's find out. On October 22nd, 2013, Apple unveiled the iPad Air alongside the iPad Mini 2 at a keynote event in San Francisco. This was a big moment. Up until then, Apple's full-sized iPads had been getting more powerful, but they also stayed bulky. The iPad Air changed that completely. For the first time, Apple ditched the traditional thick iPad design and gave us something much sleeker. It took inspiration from the iPad mini, featuring thinner bezels and remarkably slim 7.5mm profile. This was 43% reduction in the bezel size compared to the iPad 4. And this still looks thin by today's measures as well. This is pretty much the same form factor as you see iPad 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th generation as well. And the weight, just 469 grams, which was the Wi-Fi model. Almost 200 grams lighter than its predecessor. That's why Apple called it the iPad Air. Of course, it wasn't just about looks. Under the hood, the iPad Air was powered by Apple's A7 chip, making it the first iPad with a 64-bit processor. This was the same chip found in the iPhone 5S, and it delivered twice the performance of the previous iPad, while maintaining the same 10-hour battery life. Apple also included the M7 motion code processor, which helped the efficiency by offloading motion sensing tasks from the main chip. This was particularly useful for fitness apps and background activity tracking, although that's more to do with the chip in the iPhone than the iPad, obviously. The iPad Air had a 9.7-inch Retina display with a resolution of 2048 by 1536 pixels, keeping everything sharp and vibrant. The cameras, though, weren't a huge leap forward. An improved 5-megapixel rear camera and a 1.2-megapixel FaceTime HD camera up the front. Good enough for video calls and casual photography, but definitely not a standout feature. And as I've always said, unless you're Asian, you're not going to use the iPad for actual photos. It's good as a document scanner and just in the moment though. The iPad Air launched with iOS 7. The first iOS version with Apple's modern flat design language. It introduced features like Control Center, improved multitasking, and AirDrop for seamless file sharing. Over the years, the iPad Air continued to receive updates, eventually supporting iOS 12, which helped extend its lifespan significantly. However, it didn't get iPadOS, which later became a game changer for Apple's tablets. The iPad Air set a new standard for Apple's tablets. It proved that full-size iPads didn't have to be heavy and bulky, paving the way for future models like the iPad Air 2, the iPad Pro lineup, and today's ultra-thin iPads. I mean, the M4 iPad Pro is insanely thin. And that's a lot due to their research and creating this product. Even though the iPad Air first generation was discontinued in 2016, it's still remembered as the iPad that started Apple's obsession with thin, lightweight and powerful tablets. And that's the story of the first iPad Air. What do you think? Was it a game changer or just an incremental step? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, so let's break down the full specification of the iPad Air first generation, the game-changing tablet that kicked off Apple's lightweight iPad Air lineup. We'll cover everything from the display and processor to the camera, battery life and more. The iPad Air first generation was all about portability. Apple dramatically slimmed down the design compared to previous iPads. The dimensions were 240mm by 169.5mm by 7.5mm. The weight, the Wi-Fi model only weighed 469 grams and the one with cellular was heavier at 478 grams. It's made of vermilion and the colors were space gray or silver. This of course is the silver one. So Apple reduced the bezels by 43%, making the iPad Air more compact and shrunk the display, which is 9.7 inches. It has a Retina display, which is IPS and LCD, resolution 2048 by 1536, aspect ratio of 4.3, and it's scratch resistant with a coating as well. This display developed sharp visuals and vibrant colors, making it great for watching videos, reading and gaming. But under the hood, the iPad Air was a powerhouse for its time. It had the A7 chip, which is the first 64-bit architecture, had the M7 Motion co-processor, it had a dual-core 1.4 GHz ARM chip, PowerVR GPU, and 1 GB of LPDDR3 RAM. This was the first 64-bit processor for an iPad, doubling performance and graphics compared to the iPad 4. So Apple offered the iPad Air in multiple storage capacities, 16, 32, 64, and 128 gigabytes. However, of course, no micro SD card slots, so storage was non-expandable as always. Well, the iPad Air wasn't a photography-focused device. It had solid cameras for its time. It had the 5-megapixel iSight camera with an aperture of 2.4. It recorded at 1080p at 30 frames per second, and it also had autofocus, HDR, and face detection. The front camera was 1.2 megapixels. It had FaceTime HD at 720 for FaceTime time calls, and it had HDR. So these cameras were mainly for video calls and not casual photography or professional shots, and good for scanning documents. Apple claimed the iPad Air would last up to 10 hours on a single charge with a 8,820 milliamp Pro battery, and it charged via Lightning port, so no USB-C yet. So real-world use matched Apple's claims, making it great for all-day work or entertainment. The iPad Air supported a range of connectivity. It had Wi-Fi 802.11. It had LTE 3G and 2G support, Bluetooth 4.0. It also had GPS, which was available in the cellular models. It had a Lightning port for charging and data, and the good old 3.5mm headphone jack. Yes, iPads had them back in the day. The iPad Air first generation was a huge leap forward for Apple's tablet lineup. It was thinner, lighter, more powerful, and set the foundation for future iPad Air models. Even today, some people still use it for basic tasks, proving how well Apple built this device. And that's the full specification breakdown of the iPad Air first generation. So uses in 2025, I've put this through the ringer. You can transfer media from iTunes, so music, your own files of TV and movies will work fine. Plex works on it, Netflix works on it, Apple TV works on it. You can have photos on it, but not your current iCloud library. It's not compatible with that. However, shared album it is, which I find quite interesting. You can transfer photos via Finder on a Mac to it as well, just like you would an iPod. It can download some apps from the App Store. So it did let me download Disney Plus, and every time you click on it, it says it's downloading a version of the app that's compatible with iOS 12. this is. So this is, unfortunately, the highest it goes up is iOS 12. But it wouldn't play anything in Disney Plus. It said it had to have the updated app. But like I said, Netflix worked, YouTube worked, some websites work. So it's kind of it mostly works. And if you're just streaming Netflix or your own content, including photos, it's worth having. I mean, you can get this for under £100 now. But the problem with it being the battery's 12 years old, you're going to be very hard to find one where the battery is really going to last a decent amount of time. So those are the uses in 2025. So what do you think? Was this iPad a true game changer or just Apple's step in Apple's evolution? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, please be kind. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Tech Hub. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at TechHubWiltsUK, and please check out my website at www.techhubwiltsuk.co.uk, and I'll see you on the next episode.